Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Lindsay Dyer, and this is the LD Aviation Podcast, where we bring you real conversations with the people shaping the future of business aviation. Here at LDA, we provide scheduling, dispatch, and operational solutions that help flight departments run smoothly and scale effectively. And today's episode is a great example of why these conversations matter. Because maintenance, kind of like scheduling, is one of the most critical and often most overlooked parts of what keeps our industry flying safely. I'm joined today by two leaders from the NBAA Maintenance Committee, each bringing a completely different path into this field. Lee Brewster is chair of the NBAA Maintenance Committee and a vice president at Thoroughbred Aviation. Her path into business aviation started in the most unexpected place, and that was as a student worker in the library at an aircraft maintenance school. And then she went on to become the first woman to serve on the NBAA Maintenance Committee. And Nate Dietsch is secretary of the committee. He spent over a decade in the Marine Corps working on military aircraft before transitioning into business aviation. And now he's director of aircraft maintenance at Netflix and a 2021 NBAA Top 40 Under 40 award recipient. And in this conversation, we're talking about their very different roads into the maintenance leadership roles, what the maintenance committee actually does behind the scenes, the workforce shortage the industry is facing, and why the 2027 NBAA Maintenance Conference in Charlotte is really worth marking on your calendar. So whether you're a technician, a director of maintenance, or just curious what it really takes to keep these aircraft flying, there's a lot to take away from this one. Lee, Nate, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Okay, so first I want to just go through and kind of get an idea of how you got into business aviation. So Nate, let's start with you. I understand you spent over a decade in the Marine Corps working on military aircraft before you moved into the business aviation side. How did that military background even bring you to business aviation? I mean, they're very different.
You're right, Lindsay. They are very different, and I have to credit my transition from the military into business aviation to um, the fortunate career opportunities that I had while I was in the Marine Corps. While I did spend the majority of my time in the Marine Corps as a KC-130 flight mechanic and flight engineer,
Mhm.
um, I had the very great opportunity to serve 3 years in executive transport, supporting the Commandant of the Marine Corps in Washington, D.C. So there, I was a flight engineer on G3 and G550 aircraft,
Okay.
supporting the executive mission. So that opportunity gave me 3 years of forward-facing conversations with people in business aviation at Gulfstream, at flight safety, going through initial training, recurrent training, flight engineer recurrent training, simulators, and kind of opened my eyes to the importance of business aviation. So after that 3 year experience there, before I transitioned back to the fleet and going
Mhm.
back to flying C-130s and going back to combat deployments, I really kind of got the peek behind the curtain of what keeps business aviation running. And I just knew when my time in the military came to an end, that's where I wanted to be.
Fascinating. I mean, I didn't really even realize that makes sense, but I didn't realize that the military had that private side of it. Um,
It
Very
does.
cool.
It's not highly advertised
I bet,
for
I bet
obvious
so.
reasons.
Yes, I bet so. Fascinating. Cool. Well, Lee, you and I have known each other for quite a while. And in fact,
Oh
this is not
gosh.
your first time on the podcast.
Oh, I don't remember when the first one was. I was trying to think about that. Well, it's been a while
No,
back, but yeah, no, it is. It's always fun to come back and talk to you, Lindsay, because there's just so much to always talk about. Something new's always going on.
something always is going on, which we're going to talk about today, especially about your new position as the chair for the committee. But I wanted to start though, and because I don't think we covered this in the last podcast, but your story is different. So you were unexpectedly popped into a position at the library for maintenance school, right?
I just gotten married. We moved to Fort Worth, and I was supposed to go back to school, finish my degree, all that good stuff. My husband moved. We moved up here for a job. I started at the community college, and I needed a job. I've always worked. So I was like, I need a job. I need to do something. And so I went over there and they said, well, here's a couple of different positions available. Here's one. We have an aviation program. You want to go work over there? And I was like, sure, why not? Sounds good. I have no clue about any of it, but no. So I went over there. I started working in we called it the Learning Resource Center. It was the library. And my first job was organizing maintenance manuals, any type of paraphernalia that accompanied that, filing microfiche every night because I can't remember how many different libraries we had. So I had to file the microfiche every night for each of the different libraries from I really don't even remember how many we had. It was a ton, just because I supported all of the different aircraft we had, as well as for some reason, we still supported a lot of the local guys who just like to come in and check on their manuals for free. So we still had updated libraries. But no, but going through that, that turned into a full-time job, and I got involved with the National Science Foundation grant. So this was a 147 school and strictly maintenance. And I got involved with the National Science Foundation grant that got me to establish standards and certifications for avionics technicians. So like an industry recognized path, because there's not one obviously right now by the FAA, but this was to figure out what that was. And so I spent from about 2003 to about 2015 working on that. And the primary goal was on consensus standards across the aviation industry. So it wasn't just business aviation. We were working commercial, we were working with manufacturers, all branches of the military, all of the air carriers, cargo, light GA, anything that had an avionics component on it. And so I got to do a lot of really cool stuff and be involved in a lot of really, essentially, if it flew, I was involved somehow. I was at unmanned shows. We were doing ag aviation, the whole gamut. And it was a lot of fun. And so, I did a lot of that, but that taught me how to listen. And so I spent a lot of my career listening to the people who are performing maintenance in aviation, whether it's avionics, airframes, power plants, whatever it is, from an operational side to the business side of it. My job was to listen and figure out how to find solutions for them. And so that kind of just evolved. And I think 2009, I was invited to be a full-time member of the maintenance committee at NBAA. And I think I was the first female member of the maintenance committee as well. I think it was 2009.
Does that kind of blow your mind that it was 2009?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because my daughter was born in 2003, so I can my whole career was like, okay, Alex is 21 years now. Okay, I've been doing this for 23 years. She just turned 23. Good Lord. Wrong kid. Other kid's 21. 23 years. So, yeah, you're right. But 2009, is my entire career. So it's been interesting though, because it's been a niche opportunity. Like people ask me, like, how do I get to do what you do now? And I was like, well, there's much better ways to do what I do now. And then my path kind of took me to flight safeties to do training at DFW, which what year were you doing G3 training?
That was 2007 to 2010, but we went to CAE, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that was right before I got there. And I was like, wait a minute, did our paths? I was about to say, if our paths had crossed, I was like, wait a minute, because we did G3 training at
Definitely
DFW.
not there.
I was like, what the frick? Anyway, so I did that, and then I got into software, aviation software, and that was maintenance tracking and operations, scheduling, all that good stuff. And now that evolved into aircraft on the aircraft transaction side. And so now, it's just a little bit of everything. So it's been a very eclectic career.
I love it. And that seems to be a lot of us. We just pick up stuff but you always stay in aviation. Like
Yes.
Most of us, once we get in here, we're like, we're going to stay. Not sure which side of it perhaps, but we stay. Nate, was there like one super surprising fact or piece of business aviation that you found when you were doing those 3 years? Like, what was it that was told you, I want to do this when I'm all the way out of the military?
That's a really good question. It's everything about it was different, right? So military aviation, you're supporting a mission. And the skill set of those missions on the C-130, we were, troop and cargo transport, we were aerial refueling, we were aerial delivery. And so it was a very nuanced part of the military. And then in executive transport, it was, we're supporting the business of the military. And
Yeah.
so in doing that, in moving around all of our senior leaders there was a piece of the congressional delegation that we would move. I had the great pleasure of flying President George H.W. Bush and his wife Barbara
Oh,
for the commissioning of the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier.
cool.
And opportunities like that just showed you the importance of what business aviation does
Yeah.
and how it makes whether it's corporate leadership or military leadership or the leadership of our nation, how it allows an aircraft to become a time machine because
Yeah.
time is valuable. And so, coming from the C-130, where it takes 8 hours in a fuel stop to fly from the west coast of the U.S. to the east coast of the U.S., and then commercial aviation, where it takes the same amount of time, interestingly enough, and then in a G550, you can do it in 4 hours. It
Yeah.
just it really emphasized the importance of time. And so in doing that, it
Yeah.
just showed me that there's this fantasy land that existed at the time, because I didn't know how easy it would be to get in, and my path was not easy to go from the military to business aviation either. And I think that's a lot of everyone's experience in corporate aviation. But
Mhm.
um, it really emphasized the importance of the tools that we're utilizing to get the job done. And so, in a roundabout way of saying, it was just the machines themselves, what we're capable of achieving with that type of aircraft,
Mhm.
became very important, very sexy to me.
Mhm.
I like that, and there was an element of the people that I met along the way. Having the opportunity to go to the CAEs and the flight safeties to do recurrent trainings, and
Mhm.
you're in a ground school class with, it would be me and two military pilots, and then I'm with the directors of aviation and chief pilots from other corporate flight departments, and having lunches and dinners and rubbing elbows with them and just hearing the stories of the work that they were doing is just incredible.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at the time, 2007 and 2010 is when I was doing that. And that was the time of the economic downturn.
Yeah.
And I also sat in a lot of ground schools where a lot of chief pilots were getting phone calls
Mhm.
and being given their notices.
Wow.
And so that was the other side of the industry where it's like, man, how volatile is this industry we're talking about? But
Wow.
it's a challenge, and that's just like every business that's worth being a part of is challenging. And
Mhm.
so it was very appealing to me. But going back to your original question, I think it's the aircraft themselves and the ability to give us time back
Mhm.
was everything to me, and I just knew that I had to be a part of it somehow.
I love it. No, it's so true. Like NBAA really, they do focus on, you know, time that these tools are bringing you more time in your life, either to do more deals and make more money for your company, or perhaps it's a work life balance and you get a chance to spend more time with your family. A question kind of for both of you. When did you even get introduced to NBAA? Did you kind of always know that it was there, or?
For me, yes, because I started working with NBAA very early in my career through the grant because
Oh.
NBAA was one, well, actually, most of the alphabet organizations, NBAA, AEA, all of them kind of supported the work that the grant was doing. So I got involved with all of the alphabet organizations very, very early in my career and was very fortunate. Eli Cotty at the time was the director of technical operations at NBAA, and I swear, he just picked me up. He just drugged me everywhere with him. If he was having something going on, it was Gulfstream operators conferences, or whether it was the shows, whether it was an event, whatever it was, he was like, hey, here's an opportunity. Come and join us. So that way we can talk about the work you're doing. And so very, very fortunate that, it's been a very, very big piece of my career.
Okay, for the whole time. How about you, Nate?
Well, back to the time machine piece of this, I think you'll see some consistencies, excuse me, in my responses throughout this discussion today. But so my first experience with NBAA was in 2009.
Okay.
We were while I was stationed in Washington D.C., flying the Gulfstreams for the military. We were awarded a Gulfstream Outstanding Flight Award, and so we were invited to NBAA. That year was in Orlando, and we had to show up, and it was myself and a Marine pilot and a Navy pilot. We flew combined crews on all of our missions, and so backing that up a little bit to the event that led up to it in Thanksgiving of 2008,
Mm-hmm.
we were on an executive mission, and we flew from mainland Japan to Washington, D.C., nonstop in 13 hours in a G550. And we
Nice.
we set a Gulfstream city pair record and a speed record for the aircraft. And so Gulfstream wanted to award
Mm-hmm.
us, and we were runners up for the Albert Rowley Trophy. So if you've seen the
Yeah.
Albert Rowley Trophy, it's a large trophy that lives in Savannah, and you get your little your engraved plate put on there. We did not win that. We were beat out by an Air Force crew that was doing something much cooler. But it was pretty awesome though to see, stretch the legs of the G550 and set a speed
Yeah.
record and a city pair
Yeah.
record. And so we had the opportunity to do that. And so NBA invited us, well, Gulfstream invited us to NBAA. That was before it was called BASE, right? That
It's
was just the
NBAA.
convention in Orlando. Yeah. And so we went and we were in our uniforms and we were wined and dined and we received this Gulfstream Outstanding Flight Award. And it was a very cool experience. But
Mm-hmm.
while I was there and I was walking around the show floor, and it's just that's where you build these foundational relationships. So I'm having these conversations with people in business aviation that are actually doing the job, again, like I've done many times in the flight safety classrooms. But here we are at the big event, and we're wearing our uniforms. And obviously, I'm just going to be biased. The Marine Corps uniform is a very nice looking one, and
Yep.
so people were seeking us out and having conversations with us, and so it really opened my eyes to what the association did and does, and creates the opportunity for people in the industry to just share experiences, share knowledge within the industry. And so that was 2009. So whatever math in public is, right? That's
Oh yeah, don't ask me to do that one, but a lot of
six,
enough
17
people
years
do for
ago,
sure.
right? 17, right?
I
Yeah,
don't even know how
17
old my
years ago.
kids are.
Uh, it's 17. Yeah, so 17 years ago. But at the time, I didn't know that there was an NBAA Maintenance Committee, right? And so I just got a little snapshot of it. But again, not knowing that 5 years later, I was going to be transitioning out of the Marine Corps and looking for an opportunity in business aviation, that there was going to be a long road with NBA ahead of me. So that's kind of what got me into the whole the nuts and bolts of NBAA, and now I
Yeah.
I can't look back. I love it.
It's fascinating to me how everybody finds NBAA. It's a big organization, but then at the same time, it's
It's very
it's
niche. Yeah.
small too. It is very niche. Okay, so now I kind of want to go specifically into the maintenance committee itself, and like for those of us who maybe have never been on a board or some not part of NBAA, what does the maintenance committee do? Like, what are you responsible for on a day-to-day basis?
So the maintenance committee was formed in, I believe, 1997, and it was really formed as a way to get the operators together to start addressing some issues that they saw, primarily like with training and education. There were some regulatory things. There was also some standards, best practices as far as manufacturing. The MSG, it may have been one or two then, but now MSG 3. But some of these different things, but they wanted to have a concentrated presence and to be able to leverage the NBAA to push the different maintenance initiatives. So that was a group of about 10 operators in 1997 who came together and did that. And so that's really been the focus of the committee, has been to figure out how to advocate for the maintenance function and for the operators. Like, what are you doing in your day-to-day operations, and how can we advocate, and what can we do to have the the numbers behind us. It's not just one person, but if it's one person who's having an issue, they can come, we can discuss. And if it's something that we need to take forward, we can, whether it's the FAA or whether it's to one of the manufacturers, whether it's just trying to figure out a problem and establishing a best standard. And so, one of the big things, one of the big wins, there's a lot of different regulatory wins, ACs that have been written, different things along those lines. But I always say one of the big things was, and Gulfstream was very open about how they addressed it, was the Triple T program. Total Technical Training was the product of the maintenance committee saying we needed to find a different way to address training for our operators, to address manufacturer training. And so I've always thought that was a very good, because most people know what that is. It's very out there. It's very public. And so Triple T was was working together with the committee, scholarship, workforce development, because really, you always have to find technicians. That's just who we are. That's what we're doing. And it's a very, couple of things I've always said about maintenance technicians. They may not be the most open group, like the extroverted group, but they are a very empathetic group as a whole. And they're always trying to figure out ways to help people, to find different solutions. And, our scholarship programs were a part of that. In the early 2000s, the scholarships was, hey, I just bought 4 new aircraft. I only have 2 technicians. I have all this extra training. And so they were like, what do I can do it? So that the AMT scholarship program actually started because there were operators on the committee that had extra training entitlements. And so they started a scholarship program to give those training entitlements away. And so that's kind of the evolution of it. So it was always a group of people, and it still is a group of operators, along with our vendor partners, who are trying to find solutions for operations. Like, what are we doing today? What can we do to help Nate at his flight department? What can we do to give him tools to maybe figure out different ways, or at least give him an avenue to address different areas? And so it's always been that, as well as with the conference, scholarships, advocacy through the FAA, and even through EASA. There's been, different times we've had to address different things with EASA, with Transport Canada. Whenever there's a regulatory issue that came in, originally even environmental was under the maintenance committee. They have their own committee now. So environmental and safety, or sustainability, wrong S word, environmental and sustainability, they have their own committee now. And so, but that was all kind of part of what we did. And really, it's just to be a group that can respond and advocate for the maintenance function and for maintenance and operations. Nate,
okay,
as an operator, how do you see it?
Just the way you put it.
Okay.
No, as an operator, there's such great benefit to the work that the maintenance committee does, because not every operator has the resources or the ability to get access to certain information, right? And as like a Part 91 operator, for instance, we're not heavily regulated. There's the regulations that we have to comply with, and then there's the regulations that we can comply with if we choose to. But how we do that, unless you have a depth of experience and knowledge in doing that, that's where the value of the committee comes in, because the work that the subcommittees on the committee are doing is providing a path to accessing information for the operator. And so, collectively, we're all smarter than we are as one single organization. So, I think there's great benefit to operators in the work that we can all do together through our own experiences. And it's like the regulatory and operational compliance subcommittee on the maintenance committee does such great work in making sense of things that don't typically make sense. And so if they're able to commit the time to boil things down and simplify it, and then share that with the bigger committee, that goes out to the broader industry. And now we can see things like, Michael Cataldo, I'll give him a shout out, a few years ago, leading up till last year, right? Put together a new aircraft onboarding checklist. And while aircraft acquisitions are a normal thing in this industry, every time one happens, and it happens so infrequently for some flight departments, that you may be rusty, you may have forgotten how to do it, you may have forgotten, all the big ticket items that you need to do in conjunction with just accepting a new aircraft. LOAs, how you apply for those. Up until a few years ago, what was the ASOC? We didn't know how to go through these things in the streamlined process in the most effective and efficient manner. So you have Michael and the work that The Rock did putting together this checklist. And now any operator can go and access this checklist, and it makes it so easy because it calls out the things that you absolutely need to be focusing on.
Yeah.
But kudos to the maintenance committee for having the ability to do that and provide those things. Otherwise, we're just a bunch of people out here twirling in the wind trying to figure out how to do it. And everyone wants to do it their own way. I understand that. But, the maintenance committee develops a core function or a basis, a cornerstone to do things effectively. And it's great. And I mean, every subcommittee, workforce development, I mean, they're trying to find a way to get into schools, middle schools, elementary schools. It's not just about the colleges and the trade schools anymore.
I'm getting so excited. No, all these things that you're talking about is that's awesome. Well, one, I've known Michael for a long time, and he is spectacular, very professional. Okay, just for somebody who's listening, now walk me through how they would find that checklist. Member of NBAA.
You do have to be a member of NBAA, and if you're so really, if you go into I believe it's right on the webpage. If it's in, I think it's under operations and maintenance now. So you go on the little drop downs, operations and maintenance, and there should be the onboarding checklist. And so you should be able to download it from there. But if you can't, email me, I'll send it to you. I'll figure it out. We'll make sure you can get there.
All right.
But but yeah, so Michael's been working on a lot of that. But those are those things. It's like, how can you help in everyday operations? And who is it that's going to be your advocate and your teammate? Because obviously Michael's part of a very large flight department. Nate's part of a pretty big flight department. Yep. But there's a lot of people out there that it's them, one other person, and maybe their chief pilot, and they don't have those resources to call. But now they can at least got the list and have a conversation with somebody. Say, okay, hey, I got this checklist. Can you go through this with me, just so I can kind of wrap my head around what I'm looking at and what's going on.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot to it, but it's a lot of people just really working to try to find ways to share their knowledge to make things run smoother.
Yeah.
Because I always say this, you have to control what you can, because there's so much out of your control. Like when people have asked me, like, why do the maintenance guys, they get so wound up over this? I'm like, hey, y'all don't understand. They have this much that they control. This much, and this is what they control. They have this much that is out of their control, and they plan for it. They think about it. They focus on it, and then whatever they plan for isn't exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And so but then they're able to regroup and they change, because their entire life is focusing on this portion that they cannot control. So of course they're going to be like, this stuff that I can control, I'm controlling it very tight.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to spend time on this as much as I do, because my S word pile is much larger than the stuff I can control. And so, I think that's what it is. So what you can get to people to make them more efficient in the stuff that they can control and the things that they can do.
Very good point. Very good point. How many people are on the maintenance committee and all the subcommittees? Do you even, I don't even know. I mean,
we have about 40 members. 40. And the reason I kind of laugh is because we have some people who participate on the subcommittees are not actual committee members. So, they're like, they just want to come and work on connectivity. Like our connectivity subcommittee is it can range anywhere from 40 to 60 people. And that committee, but they're only interested, a majority of them, well, like 95% of them only want to deal with committee. They're not committee members. So that's why I kind of say, when we look at the membership, it's right around 40 members, 40 active members.
Okay. And now all of those 40 active members, I mean, you all have talked about, training initiatives, legislation or regulatory stuff, workforce development. Oh, and the annual conference, which we're going to talk about. How do you even separate that out and assign people different duties? I'm assuming that subcommittees have a big part of that.
Well, the subcommittee structure, like most of the stuff kind of falls under our different subcommittees.
Okay.
And so sometimes whether you want to be part of a subcommittee because, you want to be part of the overarching, the ROC, the regulatory and operational compliance. You
Okay.
want to be part of all that. Or you may have a specific project that you bring to the ROC and say, hey, I know this is going to take a little while, but this is something I really want to work on with your support. And so
Okay.
people can do that. And so we try to find, I mean, honestly, everybody has a little bit of a different reason for being on the maintenance committee, whether it's scholarships, they want to go talk about scholarships, whether they want to do workforce development and find those new entrants into the workforce, or they really, what are we doing to make operating better through regulatory or best standards and best practices? And so it just kind of depends on where they fit. And honest, if people come in and there's something new and it's like we haven't thought about it before, it's like, well, we can do one-off projects. It doesn't have to be a committee. I mean, if there's a large initiative that we need to address, then let's address it. The answer is not no. The answer is more like how, and let's get a plan and see where that goes.
Okay.
And what the scope is. It might be as simple as just a handout or an article, or it might be something where it's an entire program that we're going to help put together and with the entire committee and industry's perspective.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, can we talk a little bit about the actual conference? So now in 2027 is coming up and it's in Charlotte, right? And
Correct.
I want to say February, but what is the month it's in?
May.
May.
Okay, that's
First
right.
week of May.
First week of May. Okay.
No, remember, it's right before Nathan and always had to go to Derby. It's always Derby week.
Oh,
Now
that's
we're the week
right.
after Derby week. That's
That's
right.
right.
See, we're the week after Derby. But yeah, no, the first week of May, and it'll be in Charlotte. And it's funny because like Nate and I both, when you talk about us being involved with the maintenance committee,
Yeah.
the way I became very involved with the maintenance committee was when, I mean, I was working on their training and education subcommittee as part of my grant stuff, but then I think I did like 7 maintenance conferences I was the chair of. And you talk about learning the ins and outs, and then I stepped back and here came Nate and I was like, oh, thank goodness. Okay. Got some other ones. But the conference it's a labor of love, but it's a lot, but if you're in maintenance, whether it's business aviation or not, I still think it's one of the best shows.
How many people do you guys think usually come every year?
The last couple of years have been inconsistent. Obviously, coming out of COVID, right? We didn't know
Yeah.
what the conference was going to look like, and so our first year back, it was low numbers because of the requirements with proving the vaccines and using that
Right.
app that you had to get in the door. Like it was chaos.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
But slowly, we've been working ourselves back up from that point in time. So it was maybe 600 attendees coming out of the pandemic, and then I think coming out of New Orleans we had 12 or 1300
Yeah, it was right
attendees
around 12 or
close.
13. Yeah,
Yeah,
total.
so we're getting back.
Sounds like it. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. I think we've established why everybody should go. I mean, it sounds like a spectacular show that you got. How many days is it?
So it's usually 3 days of program content and about 2.5 days on the exhibit hall floor. And
Okay.
then we have fundraising activities that we do to support our AMT travel fund. And we do that on the front end with the golf tournament, and then we have like a toolbox raffle, and we have a silent auction. And so so that's on that Monday along with the PDP course. And then we're pretty much done Thursday afternoon, late Thursday afternoon, where we kind of wrap it all up. So sometimes it takes a full week. If you're doing all of it, it's a full week of fun.
Yeah, well, that's great though. And similar to schedulers, I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
there's a lot of no, how do I want to put it? I mean, there's not a lot of training, educational resources other than these committees, these large conferences for us to go to. So it's so great that you guys put it together.
And I would say ours is a little different, Lindsay, than like schedulers, because like you said, like schedulers and dispatch really don't have a lot of different opportunities to go and get, their specific training they need.
Hmm.
Most of the maintenance people, there's a lot of them that already have other training incorporated because they have manufacturers training throughout the year. So they get a lot of technical training. So what we focus on, we definitely have regulatory, and we focus on some technical topics. But we also focus on the business side. And, we're trying to, because when you reach the point of a director of maintenance, or you're, the assistant director of maintenance or something along those lines, you're being asked for your input on the budgets. You're having to do a lot of analysis, the business analysis, the business side of business. You need to learn the business side of business aviation. And so our topics kind of go along these different areas that kind of complement what they may have done with manufacturers training throughout the year. And then we got safety. We definitely do safety because we make sure that it's part of IA credit. So our attendees do have the opportunities. If they have their IA, they can get their IA credits for their IA renewals each year. And that's an important piece.
I totally didn't think about that, but you're right. So there's a lot of technical stuff going on, but then where do they get the business side of it? Okay, that's a great point. Okay, so you kind of talk about the business side of it and kind of getting into leadership and stuff, because we're seeing more maintenance personnel, employed people who are usually working in maintenance, and they're advancing through into leadership. I mean, Lee.
I'll give my opinion real quick. Not as Lee Bradshaw is a perfect example. Is that who? Yeah, Lee Bradshaw. But when you think about it, and you think about a flight department, and you think about the people that are in the flight department, the people that are in the maintenance function, they are also the asset managers. They are the people who are responsible for the primary assets of that entire department. So you have somebody, when you look at when you're looking at your flight department and you're trying to manage a flight department, you're not only managing the people, but you're managing the assets. And a director of maintenance they are the people who are intimately involved, who are intimately managing the value of that asset, the life cycle of that asset, the operation of that asset, because they have to keep those things in mind, as well as the people. And usually they're the facilities. So they're managing the assets, the people, and the facilities. The primary thing they don't manage already is, usually the pilots. And that is a very niche skill right there when you look at all the different pilot requirements and different things along those lines. But for flight departments where your director of aviation is also maybe wears two hats, if it's a chief pilot, that means your director of aviation is also gone. If your director of aviation is also who came from the maintenance side, they're usually probably more accessible. Not necessarily that there is much, because Nate would look at his calendar and say, "No, Lee, I'm never in my hangar." But it's more accessible. It's a different kind of travel. It's a different kind of travel. But there's the skills that come with, obviously, if you get up to a director of maintenance part, from the leadership, from your management, from the people side of it. But also, I think when you look at it, when you bring in the facilities, when you bring in the asset management piece of it, it really does make a lot of sense. And I'm excited. Actually, we have a little running list and I need to do better. We need to update that on anybody who's come up through the maintenance function into like those director of aviation type roles. Nate, what's your opinion? I had to give my 2 cents on that.
No, and it was 2 cents well received, because it's the, and not to take away from the history of, or the lineage of our industry, right? It's the future of our industry, though, because there is that understanding where, if you've come up through aviation maintenance and you've become a director of maintenance, and you're managing those assets, and you're managing a large budget, and you're managing people, and you're managing the facility, and you're managing all these different things, wearing all these different hats, it might not be the same trajectory as, I was a chief pilot, I flew airplanes, I managed a few pilots underneath me, and now all of a sudden I'm learning the entire business. We have the great fortune in maintenance of learning the business along the way. And Jim Elston, who's the vice chair of the committee, who's not here with us today, he said in the past that, technically minded folks like us in maintenance, we're grounded physically. Like, we are there. We are the boots on the ground every single day, and we have our fingers on the pulse of the operation. And so while chief pilots and directors of aviation, who are also pilots, are out flying airplanes, we're there and we can see everything that's unfolding, and we see the challenges that our operations side is facing. don't want to water it down. It's a very complicated part of the industry,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that we do get exposure to. And so, when looking at the efficiency of the business moving forward, why would we not have that conversation and, consider people like Lee Bradshaw or Jim Elston or Greg Hamlink, all these big names that were rising stars in maintenance that have now taken over flight departments. And
Mm-hmm.
we're all incredibly proud of them. And we're all incredibly fortunate and lucky to call them friends of ours. But it's just as we move into the future with new airplanes and new challenges, and some companies like to run their flight departments incredibly lean,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a great way to do that because you have someone that's been there, kind of moving up through the ranks and seen it almost everything in its entirety, and can just take the reins over and pretty easily uh, learn how to successfully run the department. Now, there's still a lot to learn, but like we always say from the very early days of getting your A&P certificate, is it's literally a license to learn. Every day you're expected to show up and learn something new, and we can never know everything, and that's the beauty of the industry and the beauty of our relationships at NBAA and the maintenance committee is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the
Mm-hmm.
things you
Yeah.
don't know, you can pick up the phone and you can get the answers pretty easily because someone
Mm-hmm.
else has seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And Lindsay, when you talk about the committee as a whole, like since I mean, like I said, I've been involved with this committee since 2003, and the
Mm-hmm.
professionalism and the business side of it and those skills has always been at the forefront to make sure that technicians knew that, hey, there are opportunities. You prepare yourselves for these opportunities, you learn these skills. There is a reason that you need to know P&Ls, and there's a reason that you need to understand the budgets. Yes, you need to learn Excel. Yes, you need to know these things because you're going to be able, because these opportunities are going to be there. It's taken a little bit of time, and there are, I mean, the maintenance function, and if you come up on the flight side, they are very different. But there, I believe that I think that there's now that visibility into everything that the people who come up on the maintenance and the technical side have been doing, that now it's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more appreciated, that it's not just a default to the pilot. And I think that's
Yeah.
and I think that's a lot of what's been asked. Because I mean, even aside from maintenance, you're seeing people who came up from like the scheduling and operations side, not necessarily the pilot
Yeah.
side, who are now coming up there. So I think that um, even though the pilot side, it just shouldn't be the default. That let's go through and let's see who's the best fit for that flight department, and like how does that work out, and see how these different skills apply. And I think that's where we've gotten to now, and it's really exciting to see.
If I could add, tying that back to the conversation about the maintenance conference, right? We have those general sessions, and depending on the year, right, it could be 24 general sessions to 32 general sessions, like we tried to
Mm-hmm.
accomplish in Columbus last year. It's not just the technical stuff, but it's also the business of the business and leadership stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look at the success of a flight department, it doesn't matter if you're a scheduler, a DOM, a chief pilot, line service tech, though I don't think there are any line service tech DOAs out there right now. Um, what it all boils down to is leadership, how
Mm-hmm.
you lead people. It doesn't matter if you can, apply for an LOA or you can file a flight plan. It comes down to how you lead people. And if you can lead people effectively, then that's that job. The job is
Mhm.
that specifically leading the department. And so, what we need to focus on in the future, and that's where the maintenance committee, I think, excels, is making good leaders. And that's really the name of the game.
No, absolutely.
Which my next question is going to be about. I want to talk about the workforce and how to get more into them because I have a couple of statistics there. But I want to just say that I think the way you guys just explained that might have been the most direct and easy for me to understand reasoning why a maintenance technician would have come through the ranks and would be just a perfect person for a DOA position. And one, it is just physically being there. I get that. That's a very easy one. And I guess I never really connected those two. But the other one is the asset management. asset management and managing the facility and just managing all of that is so much closer to managing a department than it is managing one flight leg or one aircraft from going from point A to point B. Not that there aren't great pilots and stuff in those DOA positions as well, but that really resonated with me. So thank you. That was cool.
Well, I will say this, Lindsay. It will probably upset about 50% of the listeners that we said that.
Right.
However, going back to my military career, right? And this was a big thing. The Marine Corps is very proud and very well known for building outstanding leaders. I mean, and that's a big
Yeah.
part of my career was going to all these leadership courses and learning how to lead people, not to manage people. And so you made a really important comment there about how managing a flight leg or managing an event or managing a situation, when you get to that level of leadership at a director of maintenance level, a director of aviation level, it's not about managing the people. It's about leading the people, because you want to have the right people in place that can manage the situations, but it's all
Yes.
about leadership at that point. So I think that's important to call out as well.
And those people that work on it, and I think that's one of the things is like now that you've identified it and how it goes beyond the technical skill, that there's, that keep developing. Yes, I understand you've been a G550 Master Tech since they first started the G550 Master Tech program. You've got all these different things, you've got these technical skills, but you also need to work on the soft skills, the people skills, your leadership skills as well, because it doesn't, just because you're on the maintenance side doesn't necessarily mean you're the best person at all, but at the same time it means that you have a very good base to start if you choose to develop those skills to take yourself to that next level.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, just shout out for your conference. Obviously, that's exactly what that's for.
Mhm.
So, and what better place to get it than other aviation people teaching you those
Right.
skills for your specific niche industry? Yep.
It's not a lot of outside speakers coming in and telling you how to do it. It's people that have done it,
Uh huh.
showing you that it can be done. We're walking examples of it,
Yep.
and it's the whole person concept, right? Like you want to be,
Whole
uh,
person.
you
Yes.
want to excel at everything,
Hmm.
in order to support the success of your company.
Nice. Okay, so we've talked about how a person could go from the beginning, all the way through to the top as a DOM or DOA even. But then I've seen some of the statistics. In fact, something about 74,000 maintenance technicians in the next, gosh, less than 10 years by 2032. Is that true that we're going to be missing that many people?
I would say yes
It
and
is. It is
no.
not untrue.
It's not untrue.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good way to put it, Nate.
Yeah.
It's not untrue. I think my opinion is there is definitely always a need, and the more airplane. I mean, when you look at the numbers of airplanes that are being sold, look at the back orders. Um, Business aviation is not slowing down, so you're going to need more. And those new entrants, I think there is definitely a gap between the new entrants to the workforce, which they are actively working, and then the experience. Our industry seems to have lost a lot of the middle people. And so
Yep.
we've lost a lot of those, especially in our MROs and service centers, and you've lost a lot of that experience. So you're going to have a huge attrition issue. And now you're having people with 2, 3, maybe, I mean, if you're 4 or 5 years, I mean, you're getting pretty lucky, but there's people with like 2 years of experience who are being promoted to program leads or something along those lines in these environments that it's just because of there's not enough people. And when
Okay.
back in my school days, one of the things, it was always very evident. And my son, so I made my own little mechanic now. He's actually working out at West Star, and he went through the West Star Academy. But one of the things we talked about a lot was, one of the things is the airframe and power plant license is probably one of the most uh, useful licenses you can get, because if you choose not to
Okay.
stay in aviation, the application across
Hmm.
other industries is
Hmm.
so immense. I mean, you can walk into so many other industries with that license, and it is recognized and it's appreciated. And so we lose people right out of A&P school because they get opportunities from other industries. So it's we're all fighting for the same pool of people. And so it makes it very
Huh.
hard to stay in that same pool of people because, the railroad is always I mean, the railroad sees a power plant license and they're like, we're in, we'll pay you. Here's, come join us. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we always, amusement parks and elevators, they love A&Ps. And, you go in making six figures as an elevator technician in the union job with normal kind of hours and life's not all that hard. Some of those things are hard to oil and natural gas, it's the same technologies that follow the stuff in the air are following them underground. So there's a lot of demand for that particular skill. So it's not only getting them in the doors, but it's also keeping them. And then you also have the airlines.
Sure.
Airlines are starting some people at six figures with a signing bonus if you have your license and just a little bit of experience. And that's hard to, that's the realities that business aviation has to compete with. And I believe the operators then have, the operators feel the pinch because MROs and service centers are where the people are trained to come and work for them and their floor. You don't just
Yeah.
jump right into a technician's job, usually in a Part 91 flight department. You
Mm-hmm.
might be able to
Mm-hmm.
do it in a 135 environment, but you're not,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit different. But, where are those first jobs coming from? And that's one of the things we're focusing on right now is when we're talking to people is how do you get the first job? Because, Nate goes out and talk and they're like, well, I want to be Nate. And it's like, well, that's great. But you got to get with, but let's talk about what that first step is and let's figure out a way, because then they ask, well, how do I start? And you're just kind of like, well, okay, we need to have a list of those first jobs and keep their excitement going. So that way they look at business aviation as an option. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Boeing has always had a very dire outlook on everything since the very beginning. And when you look at overall, like commercial aviation, there's going to be a huge deficit there. There is a huge
Yep.
deficit across the world. So when you're looking at 74,000 technicians across the world, there is yeah. Especially in like some countries who make it even harder to be a technician when you're looking at like some of the YASA requirements and some of the other countries. But it's how do we keep them? I think we have almost more of a retention issue than we have of a recruitment issue. And that's something we can almost control in some ways.
Sure. So, okay, so I have some side note on that one. Would it be safe to say that, a lot of people are going to the airlines, right? Airlines have to have things done and they're working on shift work. Like they're not arbitrarily saying you're going to come in from, 9 to 9 or something. It's a shift work. They know they need it. It's really a numbers section. But then you look at business aviation and they're like, well, we might ask you to start at 6 a.m., but then we might ask you to start at 10 a.m., and then you might have to work until that airplane comes back, which is at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And would it be safe to say that that's part of the retention and that maybe business aviation has to start looking at this more of a, I don't want to say shift work, but it's almost like you're firefighters. Like you have to have somebody on staff, like
That's
better work hours.
it's a challenge. That's a challenge we're always facing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very good point. But at the same time, it's not entirely practical, right? Because not every corporate flight department has the financial means
Yeah,
to have 100 technicians on staff, so they can have shift work that covers 365 days a year, 24 hours a day.
yeah, yeah,
And that's the reality of most corporate flight departments is sometimes the airplane has to move on Christmas Day, and
yeah.
it requires someone to make a sacrifice. So for us as corporate operators, I think it's important that we set an expectation. And, to Lee's point about looking for that level of experience, and this is, I don't want to misquote this. It's an old statistic from the DOT a couple years ago. I think the average age of the aircraft maintenance technician was like 57 and a half. And so we have all these commercial and general aviation
Mhm.
wide. We have all these technicians that are about to retire, knocking on the doors of retirement. And then we have all these young technicians like Zach, Lee's son, who are just now getting, cutting their teeth and getting their experience. But back to that whole person concept, while I know Zach through Lee, he could be incredibly successful if he came to work for me. There's no doubt about it, because he has the tenacity and the ambition to learn how to do the job. But then there's the people that are really comfortable in their career that have been changing a widget, changing a part on the service center floor. And if you put them into the corporate aviation environment, and now they have to start learning the business, they have to start learning how to order parts and return core parts on their own, and not rely on a supply system to do it for them, or expediter. I'm getting ahead of myself, to do it for them. There's all these things. I have to launch and recover airplanes. I have to shake hands with my CEO. I have to be the face of the business now, as opposed to just a person working on third shift, troubleshooting parts or troubleshooting discrepancies and changing parts. So like, we're missing that gap there. And so where we can do better is we can set the expectations, but in order to do that, it requires face-to-face contact with the people who are coming into the industry, so they know the things that you can work on is, look, you absolutely need to be able to safety wire properly. But 20 years into your career to be walking around saying that you're the best safety wiring person, like, that's not what being a good technician is. Again, it's that whole person concept. You have to know everything. And if you came into the industry as an A&P technician and your strength is power plants, specifically turboprops, that's great. But if you start working on a brand new G700 or Global 7500, guess what? Your strength needs to be avionics, Bubba. And that, there's no getting around that. And, and if we start talking about technology, like, how are we going to leverage AI and, the fault diagnostics troubleshooting tools that are right around the corner? And it's not safety wiring anymore. And it's not, going up and looking at a component and going, oh, that's a 3/8 bolt, I bet you. And then you walk to the toolbox and grab 1 3/8 wrench, and you go back and it's like, man, I'm a good technician because I knew exactly what size that was. That a good technician does not make, right? So,
Yeah.
not to take away from the people who excelled in that for so long, but this industry is moving, and if we're not ready to jump on board, then we got to get off. And I think that is where the maintenance committee is excelling, because through our Campus Connect program, we're going to Part 147 schools and getting to interface with these students and talk about, because again, graduation day, the airlines are waiting at the door on the outside. We don't have the luxury of doing that in business aviation, but they're casting a big net and a big shadow and stealing everyone to do just that, to go do shift work and just change a part. Where we need to get in front of people and say, look, if you go there first, if you go to an MRO first, remember that we still exist, and to write our names down and to find us on LinkedIn, because there will come a day where you're like, I'm just kind of over this, and I'm ready for the next step, and I'm ready for a challenge, and I'm ready to learn the business, and I'm ready to do the things that business aviation is asking us to do. So there's a level of flexibility that goes with that. And shift work, that's always a hot topic for us, because it's something that we can never solve for, because there will always be the airplane that's coming home at 2:00 on a Thursday morning that no one wants to come in and recover. And it's going to come in with 4 squawks, and it's going to leave on Thursday afternoon at 1400. But you have to figure out, if you're going to MEL those 4 squawks, if you're going to repair those 4 squawks, how you're going to get that airplane back out to support the mission the next day. And that is where that experience comes in, that maturity comes in. We have to find that crossing point, and then we just have to make good people.
And so, Lindsay, one of the things Nate brought up was our Campus Connect. And so a few years ago, I think we've 5 years ago now, because we've made 5 school visits. That's how I know. Actually, it may be 4 years. I think we did 1 out of schedule. But anyway, so about 5 years ago, we started what we call Campus Connect. And so we have 2 meetings. The committee has 2 meetings a year. And so we've now started having our Q1 meeting at an actual school campus. And so we go into a 147 program. We have our regular meeting, but then we also work with the campus and the program to see what kind of program we can do with the students. I kind of compare it to speed dating, as kind of like our setup is, we put the students at tables, and then we have the committee members go around to all the tables to try to talk to as many students as possible. And the reason we do that is, and usually connectivity usually has their meeting there as well. So we have a lot of people from the connectivity that really enjoy participating in this. And what it does is it allows a lot of students to see all the different ways pathways that people have gotten to where they're going and what the different opportunities are. Because we have the 91
Mm-hmm.
flight departments, you have 135 charter, you have the people who are in the MROs, you have our services. I mean, so we have all of these different representatives who came from some sort of maintenance background. And these are all your opportunities in business aviation. It's not in business aviation maintenance. And then it can go even further from there. But it's like, talking to the students, because the reality is when you're talking to a group of students, there's probably only a small percentage of those students who will adapt well to a business aviation environment, to that kind of on-demand whole airplane
Sure.
environment. So if you can find, if you
Yep.
just, I consider it a win if like we were at K-State this past K-State Salina, and this past spring, January, whenever it was, March. We changed our meeting, and now I can't remember when we had it. Weather. So, but we went over there, and there's a couple of kids that really stood out, but there was one that he's like, no, I mean, he's like in it. He's 18 years old. He did dual credit. He's going through these things, but the idea of going in and working in an environment where he's just changing out a component or just fixing or inspecting a component, that doesn't appeal to him. Being able to do something
Yep.
different depending on what the airplane tells you it needs that day, and being able to adapt to but then at the same time, not intimidated to go shake the CEO's hand when he comes in. So the more you talk to the students, the more they get the exposure, you can kind of see which ones who would be a good fit for this industry. And there's some that,
Yep.
they're not. I want my shift. I want to go in. I want to do this. And fortunately, there's a lot of opportunities
Yep.
for them in the airlines and manufacturing.
And it's not unlike any sports team, right? Like you have each player has a strength, each position has a strength. And
Yeah.
so there are flight departments that need a technician who's just really good at changing parts.
Yep.
And then there are, flight departments that need someone who's exceptionally good at the regulatory side of things and managing the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a utility player in every function and on every team. And it's important to find those things. But then there's also that level of expectation that we have to set at Campus Connect, because there are the students that we meet that are like, oh, I'm getting a degree in aviation management. Therefore, when I graduate, I'm going to be looking for a director of aviation job.
Okay.
Well, cool. However, you do have to learn the business, whether that's being a line
Right.
service tech for 25 years and working up that way, whether it's being a maintenance technician and being a DOM, whether it's being
Mm-hmm.
a pilot and going through chief pilot to the director. Like there are avenues to go. You just can't go from doing one thing to being the boss without, learning the business, learning how to be a leader, and going through the steps. And the steps
Mm-hmm.
aren't there. It's when you play Monopoly, you don't go from the first square to the last square and win. You have to work your way around. And man, Monopoly is a long game to play. So,
It is. It is.
there's that level of expectation that needs to be set too. Because again, at some schools, they're paying for the degree and they're paying for the program, and the schools are going to tell them, "Oh man, once you get this aviation management degree, you're golden. You're going to be it
Mm-hmm.
out there in the business." And then
Mm-hmm.
you're up against people that have been doing it for 30 years, and they're like, "Man, I've really had to struggle to get to where I am because I had to put in the time and the work and the effort and show that."
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a shift that needs to happen. And I think, we're doing that really well with what Lee said with our little speed dating thing. And full disclosure,
No,
no one's dating.
no dating.
Uh, we're just taking the time to show them the ropes and how you can go from where you're at to where you would like to be. It's a reality, but again, like everything else, it takes time and effort.
I love that concept of just the fact that you don't have to do just one thing, right? And now you're going into these schools. So these are people who have most likely graduated high school, and this is kind of their next step, right? But I think, Nate, you were the one who mentioned a little bit before, elementary school and high school, elementary, middle, and high school, right? So how do you get into, or because I also think that is a big time that we need to grab people for not only maintenance tech, but just business aviation in general. How do we start instilling this idea of don't just do one thing kind of way back in elementary or middle school?
Well, and that's it's an excellent point, and it's always something that it's a challenge for us because, like any kid, I, I I think we can all agree, the three of us in the call, that we can't look at our childhood and say, "Oh, we were on social media and we saw someone doing this," right? For
Right.
us, it was
Yep.
very, very different. The
Yep.
technology was not what it is today. We didn't have access to the things that kids have today.
Mm-hmm.
And what those things are missing is, I don't know that there's a lot of business aviation maintenance influencers who are
Oh
making
yeah.
all this stuff look cool to kids.
Mm-hmm.
But there are, like, pilots have always been cool to everyone, right?
Sure. Right.
And we need to try and find a way to make aviation maintenance look cool, and we need to show them that there's a need for it, and that it's a good quality of life. It's a wonderful industry to work in. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great job. It's incredibly rewarding. It's a challenge, but it's incredibly rewarding. And so how do we do that? We have to get in front of the kids, because most
Yeah.
kids, by the time they're in high school, I don't personally have kids, but from what I'm seeing of other people's kids, by the time they're in high school, their mind is made up. They're going to
Yep.
college, they're doing this, they're going to
Yep.
study this program, and
Yep.
they're not up for renegotiating their path forward.
Yep.
So the earlier we can get in front of these kids, the better. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where, like Lindsay Norris and Brian Maloney on the Workforce Development Subcommittee, they put together packages to go in front of, to get to these schools, and all the things that we needed to be talking to these kids about, and the things that are important to kids. And there's just, we got to get in front of them, and we got to make it cool. And we have Jim Crone is now on the maintenance committee, and he's the director of maintenance for the Goodyear airship operations. And what
Mm-hmm.
kid doesn't think the Goodyear blimp is cool?
Very
So,
true.
like, there are different avenues to get in front of people, and I think there's a good opportunity in the future
Mm-hmm.
to make aviation maintenance cool again.
I I can't. I want to find a. No, I'm gonna find a maintenance influencer now. Like you're right. I'm not on social media that much, but I'm gonna ask my kids. I bet you they could find. If they can't find one, I think you're right. We need to
There's a
make
few that are pretty
one.
good. There's a few that are pretty
Yeah.
good. They're pretty
There are, yeah.
entertaining. I'll send you some links, Lindsay, to some that are pretty good. But I mean, and I think business aviation though specifically has to be careful about the influencer side of it, because when you look at the influencer side on business aviation or private aviation, they stay very much in the luxury and excess side of what it is. And when you look at that, that's not the
Yeah.
reality of a lot of what that is. It is, it is people, exactly like
Yeah.
Nate said, it is a time machine. It's how people get business done. It's how you get work done. It's how you take care of, how you're transporting your team back and forth. I mean, you can look at Netflix and say, oh, well, that's cool. They fly all the famous people. But you know what also they do? They have a shuttle that is consistently taking their employees back and forth, because, that's one of the most efficient ways. And, and so I always, like influencers, it's like great. But then at the same time, I'm like, there's some that are just so cringy when you look at them, because they really lean on that luxury and excess. And I mean, it's just cringy. And to some people it turns them off. Like to some young people, that does actually turn them off. That's like that's not a world I want to be a part of. And so yeah, so social media,
Right.
but there's some good ones out there. There's this one guy. He's a maintenance. I forgot his name off the top of my head, but I'll send it. He's funny. He's always doing some kind of little tidbits
I
or
know.
something, and he
Okay.
has a ton of followers. And then I got this little ag aviation girl I follow in Canada. She's 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 really cool. I like
No,
following her. But I like the ag aviation stuff. That those people are crazy.
I do too. Right? I know. And so I live in a pretty agricultural small town and stuff, and they spray and there's a whole flight department with
Oh
these beautiful
yeah.
bi-wing airplanes that are all ag. And I just drive by and I'm like, wow, it's like a whole fleet of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do. I love that section too. So, okay, so we've talked about, like the committee, and we've talked about our need for more people to come in here. I know we've kind of gone past our hour already, but what I want to talk about the future real quick. What do you think is most going to change in maintenance work, like the actual work in the next 5 years,
Take
especially
it
with
first,
AI?
Nate.
You mentioned it a little bit before.
Yeah, so I'm happy to start there, and I think we're seeing it already with and Lee and I had a great conversation about this a few weeks ago about like with Claude right now.
Yeah.
We can use AI to solve so many simple problems that it's safe to say that in aviation maintenance, a technician's job is protected for a while because AI is not going to go out there and change parts and fix components
Sure.
for us. But we can and back to what you asked earlier, Lindsay, about the shift work piece, the shift, how we can have a better quality of life or a better work-life balance in corporate aviation given our operations are 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. If we can start to solve for the problems that we waste a lot of time on
Hmm.
by using AI, that's where
Hmm.
we're going to excel. And
Sure.
so, there's certainly the diagnostics tools, which will get better as, aircraft maintainability data is shared. And the OEMs can use that data to inform the life cycle of components and premature part failures. Like all that will be great. And then we'll know well in advance of a component failing that we need to change this part, and someone's going to tell us that, which is perfect because then we waste less time troubleshooting a problem when we know it's already happening. And this
Hmm.
technology is already on the new airplanes, and with AI it can help the maintainability groups figure all that stuff out. And then we
Okay.
use AI, a closed source AI, to try and figure out how I can solve for, I have this complex flight schedule coming up, I have some maintenance that I have to fold into it. Tell me how I can merge my maintenance and the flight schedule to come up with a bulletproof work schedule that's not going to
Hmm.
fatigue my team, burn my team out. It's going to give them this
Yeah.
amount of time off. It's going to support these flights. And then AI comes back and says, oh, well, I have this response for you. And it's exceptionally good at that already. And
Yes.
so I don't know. That's what I get excited about. And I'm not even like a big computer guy. And I was worried about AI to begin with. And now I'm like, man, I'm going to let AI do all the simple things, and I'm going to let
Yeah.
it build like what I've just learned is how to. I don't want to turn this into an AI session, but I've just learned how to have Claude give me a daily brief. It checks all my emails for me and tells me what the most important emails are. It
Yep.
prioritizes those, tells me what's on my calendar for the day. If there's any agendas attached to those calendar items, it tells me what agenda items I need to be focused on. And now
Hmm.
I get a daily brief from Claude, and it saves
Right.
hours of my day. And I think that's going to be exciting. And hopefully, because kids are growing up with this today, hopefully kids realize like, well, this exists in aviation maintenance.
Hmm.
And hopefully they get drawn to that as well, instead of just,
Yeah.
the old school mentality of, getting beat down
Mm.
and overworked, because that's not really it at
The
all anymore.
scheduling piece of it is like we use that same thing in a closed source AI. You just dump your schedule in, and if something changes, I manage 14 different people and different flight schedules, etc. Now, our actual flight schedules don't go in there because we work kind of more of shift work, but I do say, hey, employee number one has to take these days off. How do I best replace or have somebody fill in for he or she without overworking? Or, I mean, you could even bring into the fact
Hmm.
that you have to pay overtime. What are the holidays things? Yeah, we put all of that in there.
Well, it is, but it's like exactly those skills that you need, because one of the things I like to tell people who are like wanting to move up is you have to learn the language of business. You have to learn the language of this because if especially in a 91 corporate flight department, your leadership is not going to learn the language of aviation, and they're not going to learn your language. They don't
Yeah.
understand some of the nuances, so you have to learn how to translate that into something that they understand and how that makes sense, especially when you're talking to your CFO and it's budget time or something along those lines and they don't understand why do we have to have this much money to do this? Why can't you find a cheaper vendor? Well, you can find a cheaper vendor, but it's about the value, it's not about the cost in these different cases. And you have to be able to make these cases, and I see like AI being able to help you do those. I think I see AI being able to kind of bridge that gap and also educate at the same time, because that's one of the things that like I've been doing some things on, and I'm like, okay, I know I'm deficient in this, so I know I need this, but I'm deficient in this. So as we're going through this, teach me. and it teaches. And so like, hey, like, and I just have to make
Yeah.
sure that I'm asking the questions and that I'm, like, teach me while I'm doing this. But I also think that one of the things that AI has also brought to the forefront is how important experience is to be able to evaluate the AI output. And that's, and so,
Oh,
so
very, very.
yes, Lindsay, and you probably don't, it's one of the things you probably don't even realize you do it because, you're so experienced with what you do and how you do it, as you can look at it and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. But you can also say, no, that's actually not going to work. This is why this isn't going to work, and train it to think about this next time because this is the reality of the situation. So I think experience actually becomes more important because as you're evaluating and training the AI to fit your flight department or whatever your use case is, you have to have that.
You do. That's a huge, very good point. You have to know when it's wrong because it is wrong sometimes. Yep. Yep. Very good point. Man, you guys, this has really been awesome. I have learned a lot about a lot of the maintenance side. And and I've been around for a while and obviously I've worked with maintenance departments the entire time. And I think that you guys really brought some real clarity to, what opportunities are out there and why is a maintenance tech a really good person in a leadership role oftentimes. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time today. I know I took up a good bit more than I said I was going to originally.
Well, we'll keep talking, Lindsay.
Oh, it was great to be here.
I know. I know. I have a million more. We could do another one of these. So
Sure.
Well, this has only scratched the surface. I mean,
Yeah.
right.
that's the thing is in aviation maintenance, we have so many, we're not juggling balls or plates. Like we have so many chainsaws in the air at all times. And it's hard to
So
solve for
true.
everything. So there's a lot of conversations to be had and many more volumes to come, I'm sure.
All right. Well, I'll reach out to you guys again.
No, absolutely.
And again, I thank you again so much for joining me, sharing your stories, giving me, your honest feedback. I love the fact you said 50% of the people might not like some of the answers that we gave, but that's great.
And please,
Um,
everyone.
no, you can't. And should we probably should be trying to really push that envelope and push the thinking, and see what expand our opportunities and our views. So anyway, thank you again so much for your time. And then for everyone who's listening, if you're a technician, you're a student, someone thinking about a career in maintenance in general, I hope this conversation really showed you just how many doors are actually open in this industry, especially the business aviation side of it. So if you are planning to attend the 2027 NBAA Maintenance Conference in Charlotte, I really hope you are, and definitely reach out to Lee or Nate or anyone on the maintenance committee. They're there to help you navigate that conference and get the most out of it possible. So also, if you did find value in this episode, please share it with someone in your network, technician, scheduler, director of maintenance, anybody who could use a reminder of how much this work matters in the industry. And don't forget to like us, follow us, and subscribe so you don't miss the next conversation that we have lined up with other business leaders in business aviation. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the LD Aviation Podcast.